Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to my breakdown of Dana White's Contender Series week number 5. We've got 5 fights on the card, a couple switch ups. We'll get into them a little bit later. Just to clarify, it has been about 2 years since I've uploaded a video. There's no real reason for it. It just got away from me, if I'm being completely honest. The thing is, with Contender Series, a lot of these are volatile fights, meaning they literally could go either way. There's a lot of variables to be taken into account, levels of competition, style matchups, and it also takes a shit ton of time to make those graphics, from scratch, and getting good quality photos, making everything look sharp. I'm a perfectionist, so when I upload something, I don't want to upload a damn topology, a topology breakdown of each fight. I feel like that's pretty lazy, and that's not to disrespect anybody that does it. Doesn't suit the person that I am. I don't like to release mid content, even though some people might not like the content that I make. I like to make sure everything that I put out is to my own standards, and which is why I stopped making videos, because it take way too long, and I don't want to give people half-assed effort into my breakdowns, because regardless of what I say, people are gonna take my advice and put money on it, which is strange, because Contender Series, if we're being real, is very hard to predict. My record this season so far, I believe, is 12-7. I'm actually coming off a 5-0 week last week, weirdly enough, because a lot of people from what I know scored the Mateo Vogel versus Timothy Kuwamba fight for Mateo Vogel, which I completely agree, right? I scored it 29-28. And that's partially the reason why I went 5-0, and it was a late switch up as well. So if I was on the Mateo Vogel side, I would have been pretty pissed off if I wasn't able to get that 5-0 because of that judge. But we're going into this week with high confidence, and I'm ready to break down these fights for you people. And to start off, we have the first matchup that got switched up. We've got Dione Barbosa going against Rainn Guerrero. Both women are 31 years of age. Actually, weirdly enough, are literally 5 days apart in age, which is literally funny, because I believe when this fight got announced, because Rainn, I believe, pulled out, I think it was literally like 5 days ago, which is pretty hilarious. But yeah, in this matchup, I'm gonna favor Dione Barbosa. I think a lot of people are expecting Rainn to be the favorite here, which I completely understand, right? She's a dog. She puts the pace on people, and she does her best work really when her opponent is against the cage, right? Because she could let off those wild hooks, likes to do a bunch of takedowns against the cage. But Dione Barbosa is actually a former Olympic judo team member for Brazil, and she's got great balance. And she went against Jenna Bishop in the LFA. Jenna Bishop, I believe, is a pretty credentialed BJJ practitioner, and in that fight, Dione Barbosa beat the brakes off Jenna Bishop. Honestly, I was shocked. Like, I was expecting something crazy to happen, where the judges would go towards Jenna Bishop, but I strongly believe Dione Barbosa won that fight. Yeah, in that fight, Dione Barbosa honestly shocked me. She had pretty not polished striking, but you could tell that she's very comfortable and has spent a lot of time in the gym sharpening her skills, right? She's got some pretty great straight shots. Her body kick is pretty nasty. And for someone like Rainn Guerrero, if I'm being honest, isn't the best defensively sound. I feel like her best asset is the fact that she just doesn't go away and that she puts the pace on you. But in terms of like levels of competition as well, definitely favors Dione Barbosa. And she's just a bad stylistic matchup for Rainn Guerrero, because for Rainn Guerrero to have success, she needs to be able to pin Dione Barbosa against the cage, mix in her combinations, go for takedowns, and I just don't see Dione Barbosa getting taken down. Maybe she'll get her back taken, because Dione Barbosa at times can expose her back, but I just think Dione Barbosa is pretty much sufficient in every single way here. I'm actually predicting Dione Barbosa to actually get a knockout here. Seems a little bit crazy, obviously, because it is a women's MMA fight at flyweight, but with the way Rainn Guerrero moves forward, throws those looping hooks, and leaves her chin down the center, I can see Dione Barbosa catching her with a flying knee. In that Jenna Bishop fight specifically, she knew that Jenna Bishop was only really going to have success if she was able to get Dione Barbosa on the mat. And Dione Barbosa did a very good job of throwing attacks down the center, whether it be a flying knee or a front kick. I think she's going to tag Rainn Guerrero here. So give me Dione Barbosa by flying knee knockout in the second round. But if you are on the Rainn Guerrero side, you're probably leaning Rainn Guerrero by decision, right? Hoping she can put the pace on a short notice Dione Barbosa and winning those last 2 rounds. But for me, I think Dione Barbosa is pretty much covered here in every way, and I got her winning by second round KO. Moving on up, we got featherweight fight. In my opinion, going to be fight of the night. We got Lord Jean Silva versus El Chino Kevin Vallejos. You got 21 years of age for Kevin Vallejos, and you got 26 years of age for Jean Silva. He's fighting out of the Fighting Nerds in Brazil with, you know, the team that Caio and Bruno train at. And then you got Kevin Vallejos fighting out of Argentina with Brothers of Life MMA, where Francisco Prado originally trained at. And he's also got the lightweight title that Prado used to hold. He's the double champ for Samurai Fight House promotion out in Argentina, if I'm not mistaken. And then you got Jean Silva fighting out of the Brazil regional scene. Nothing crazy. He didn't fight in the big promotions, you know, Jungle Fight, Shudo, any of those promotions. But he does have a nice little 10-2 record with a pretty solid team, which I do think is going to try to bring a pretty solid game plan against Kevin Vallejos. But I do have Kevin Vallejos in this matchup for a couple reasons. Jean Silva relies heavy on his movement for his defense, right? He keeps his hands down, plays into the crowd. You know, he's a fun fighter, don't get me wrong, and I'd love to see him in the UFC. I just don't think he's put it all together just yet, right? He's still 26. I think Kevin Vallejos is going to be able to rip the body, and something that Kevin does very well is he ends his combinations with an outside leg kick, which is going to really deter that movement for Jean Silva, and that's going to allow Kevin to crack that chin real nice, but not to suck off Kevin too much. One thing I really dislike about Kevin Vallejos is the man doesn't throw a single fucking jab. I think, like, genuinely, truthfully, I don't think I've ever seen Kevin Vallejos throw a jab. Like, not even feint a jab. The majority of his combinations are led with that left hook, and it's worked for him so far, and I think it's going to work for him in this matchup. So give me Kevin Vallejos by round 2 KO. Moving on up, we got Chad Hanekom versus Dylan Budka in the middleweight division. This is the second matchup that was switched up. We got Dylan Budka stepping in on short notice to face Chad Superman Hanekom. Actually, a pretty interesting matchup stylistically, if we're being pretty honest. Like, both these guys are pretty heavy wrestlers. Chad Hanekom coming from a rugby background, and Dylan Budka, former collegiate wrestler. But in terms of the tail of the tape, we got 9-2 for Chad Hanekom, and we got 6-2 for Dylan Budka. 23 years of age for Dylan Budka, and I believe Chad Hanekom is 33 years of age. You got 6'4" for Chad Hanekom, and you got 6 foot for Dylan Budka. Both identical reach. You got Chad Hanekom fighting out of Fight Fit Militia in South Africa, and you got Demolition Fight Team in Ohio for Dylan Budka. And to start, I do like Chad Hanekom in this matchup because I do think he's got the striking advantage, even though he's a very low volume guy who isn't really trying to spend time on the feet. He did have a fight with Ikram Aliskerov, which people are going to look and be like, oh my god, he's got a split decision with Ikram. He did not win that fight. I do not think he won the split decision, you know, not to be rude to him or anything. I do think that Ikram won that matchup 30-27 or even 29-28. But one thing that Chad Hanekom did really well in that fight that's going to help him here, even though Dylan Budka is a different type of wrestler than Ikram Aliskerov is, against the cage, he's pretty strong. Like, I think it has to do with that rugby. Like, when you just come from a rugby background, you just build different. And you could see it with his entries, man. Just loves his blast double legs. And I expect him to shoot here early on Dylan Budka. I think both guys are going to attempt their own takedowns. Keep in mind, though, like, even though this is short notice for Dylan Budka, he did fight last week. As of today, it was last Saturday. He fought up at heavyweight. He didn't weigh in at a very high weight. He weighed in at 207. He was originally scheduled to fight at 185. But, you know, his opponent pulled out. He got a short notice replacement at heavyweight. So we can still expect Dylan Budka to still be in some sort of fight shape, right? He did put on a bit of weight. We just have to pay attention to the weigh-ins to see how that plays out. Hanekom is going to have the size advantage, at least in terms of height. I do think he's going to have the power advantage. He's going to be able to defend those takedowns from Dylan Budka, and I do expect him to wear on Dylan Budka, maybe even get a submission, maybe like a Kimura or a knockout in the 3rd round. Moving on up, got the bantamweight division. Here we go. We got Sidey versus Ramon Taveras. You got 9-1 for Sidey and 8-1 for Ramon Taveras. You got 27 years of age for Sidey, 29 years of age for Ramon. To start, we got Sidey fighting out of the Canadian regional scene. He is the BFL and BTC bantamweight champion, with his only loss coming to Mateo Vogel, who was on last week's Contender series, and he lost that fight because he just got grapple fucked, really, right? And that fight, he just couldn't get Mateo Vogel off him. There were moments where he did get some reversals, but he couldn't stay away for too long. In this matchup, you won't have to worry about that, though, as Ramon is a boxer who has some pretty good balance and prevents himself from getting taken down a good amount of the time. But to note that Ramon hasn't necessarily faced the best level of competition, right? He fights for Combat Night. He is their bantamweight champion, and he's made everyone look as though he's supposed to. He's finished a majority of his fights in the 1st round. In this matchup, I do favor the grappling of Sidey. I know a lot of people are probably going to use that as their argument against Ramon Taveras, but Sidey, he can grapple. He will initiate the clinch, but like a majority of the exchanges that he has in the grappling is either his opponent is shooting in takedown and he's taking advantage of it. So although that could probably be his best route to victory here, I don't necessarily want to put all my eggs in that basket and say that he's going to go out there and try to grapple. I do expect Sidey to start at range, put some pressure on Ramon Taveras, and I don't know as though he's going to have too much success, because I do favor the boxing of Ramon Taveras. As crazy as that sounds, Ramon Taveras has been boxing for a solid amount of time. I do think his counters are really sharp. I think his head movement is actually pretty good. And I think a lot of people are just going to look at the level of competition and say that he's got no chance to win this fight. But if you look at Sidey's record, some of the guys he's fought twice, right? Like, so it can make his record seem a bit inflated. I do give the strength of schedule advantage to Serhiy, but the winner of this fight is going to be dependent on who does the better investment. Both guys like to go to the body. Both guys like to go for the low kick, but I'm going to go ahead and say Ramon Taveras is going to win this fight by either an early knockout with a nice hook, or I do think he might get this on a greasy decision where Serhiy does spend some time with Ramon against the cage and maybe winning that 2nd or 3rd round, but I do have Ramon Taveras winning this fight. Next up in the main event, we got Bruno Lopes taking on Brendson Rebeiro. You got 11-0 for Bruno Lopes. He is the LFA light heavyweight champion, and you got 14-5 for Rebeiro, who is the Shuto light heavyweight champion. You got 30 years of age for Lopes, 27 years of age for Rebeiro, 6'2" for Lopes, 6'3" for Rebeiro, and I don't know as though I can even try to make an argument for Brendson Rebeiro in this fight. I do got Bruno Lopes to win this fight by either KO or submission in the 1st or even 2nd round. Bruno Lopes is a much more tighter fighter. Brendson Rebeiro throws his hooks from last week. Like, he leaves his chin in the air. He pulls guillotines while he's literally in full mount. Like, it's so frustrating to watch Brendson fight. And Bruno Lopes does everything right, it seems. Sometimes he can leave himself exposed in the pocket, but he keeps a tight guard, goes to the low kick. His straight shots are his money shots. He does like the body lock takedowns, and I do expect him to be pretty successful in getting those. And I think he's going to run over Brendson Rebeiro. But if you are a betting man, you can hedge Rebeiro by knockout, because it is 205 pounders and he swings from last week. But if I'm being honest, I'm not really worried about that. The confidence is an absolute high, and that's pretty much it for this fight. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. All the timestamps will be in the comment section, as well as my linked topology, and that's pretty much it. Peace.